Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is Tour of Flanders 2024. Today's race, 270 kilometers with 17 cobblestone bergs that the riders are going to have to face in the second half of the race. Old Quaremont is one of the most famous. They're going to pass it 3 times. And when we get late into the race, it's going to be wet and slippery and miserable out there. So when they're going up the famous climbs like the Koppenberg, they're going to have to find traction any way they possibly can. Now, if you went to bed last night, you heard that on Beyond the Coverage, I said Albacete de Koninck are the #1 team here, with Mathieu van der Poel being the outright, hands-down, first page, only rider on the first page favorite. That means if you're one of any other team out there, but certainly Trek and certainly Visma Lease Bike, you want to have Albacete de Koninck chasing like crazy throughout the first part of this race. You want them chasing throughout the second part of this race. And you want Mathieu van der Poel in a large section of a split of 10, 15, 20 riders without teammates so that you can attack them and put them under pressure, and then have Mathieu van der Poel have to chase like we saw at Gent-Wevelgem. Now, when I did Beyond the Coverage, I had this great comment. One of the commenters put in there that he believes it's Mathieu van der Poel's race to lose. I never believe it's Mathieu van der Poel's race to lose. I believe he's the #1 rider here, there's no doubt about it. But at 270 kilometers of racing with a 7-man team, you have to have a fantastic team to control the whole race. I only believe it's a rider's race to lose if his team is so strong that he can control the race, get him under 20% to go of the race, and then have them light it up with something like 30, 40 kilometers to go, at the max 40. When you start attacking from 80 kilometers out, you guys have watched the Butterfly Effect before, you know I hate that. So that's why I believe when you look at Mathieu van der Poel, he's the #1 favorite, but I do not expect him to win 100% because he's the #1 favorite. I expect that the other teams have to be perfect. Their strategies have to put pressure on Albacete de Koninck, and then Mathieu van der Poel could win today's Tour of Flanders, because I don't believe his Albacete de Koninck team can be strong enough throughout the Tour of Flanders if the other team's tactics are 100% correct. Now let's get into the racing, because right away we're into it at about 255 kilometers to go, and we're going to see a group of 8 riders go up the road. Forget about them. These guys aren't even going to affect the race. Nothing that these guys do will affect the race, because Albacete de Koninck are back there. Once we see 250 kilometers to go, we see DSM attacking left and right. Albacete de Koninck are always following the attacks there from DSM. And you see it go curb to curb. The DSM rider throws a flyer off the sidewalk there. And you see the Jayco riders get all upset because he has not 1, but 2 riders in that group of 8 in the front. And we all know you're not supposed to be attacking going on the sidewalk, but in all fairness to DSM, well, they plugged the road curb to curb, so the DSM rider went over onto the sidewalk through an attack, and of course, Albacete de Koninck were directly on it. Now, we're about 230 kilometers to go. The whole peloton takes a nature break, and you can see the peloton in 2 pieces as they're coming back through the cars. That means the breakaway of 8 is going up the road. They'll get stopped by a train, and they're going to lose about a minute of that time. But a lot of those guys got a nature break out of it, right? Well, the train gets out of the way, the riders get going. But like I said, they've lost about a minute. When we look back at the peloton, it's only 1 guy pulling. Sylvain Dillier there from Albacete de Koninck is doing monster work on the front. Every time you look at the peloton, it's Sylvain Dillier on the front, solo by himself, holding this group of 8 in front of him at about 4 minutes. Now, he'll hold them all the way to about 170 kilometers to go, excuse me. And that's when the peloton starts getting nervous. Now, the upside about the peloton getting nervous going curb to curb, if you look at Albacete de Koninck, they can find places now to rest. It's no longer just Sylvain Dillier riding the front. They just have to protect Mathieu van der Poel and get him into the start of the climbs. They do a great job every time the road narrows up of having Mathieu van der Poel in the right spot. Now things start getting exciting from the attacks in the peloton, and it's going to come from Aber Hansen in there from X. He's attacking. The only problem is he's got an Albacete de Koninck rider on his wheel. He's a knucklehead. Where are you going with Albacete de Koninck? When you went to bed last night, every other team needs to be thinking about how I can put pressure on Albacete de Koninck, or Mathieu van der Poel is going to light us up in the last 50 kilometers of this race, if not the last 80. Well, with that first attack, things start getting interesting. The next knucklehead move, it's coming from Visma Lease Bike, the #2 favorite in my book anyways. That's Jorgensen attacking with 112 kilometers to go. This is an absolute knucklehead move right here from Jorgensen, the American. Hopefully it's his director telling him to do it and wanting to start the action early. But if you're going to start the action this early again, Jorgensen, in the near future, please at least put your teammates on the front that can't climb and have them light it up and go single file up into the climb so it's a monster pull all the way into the climb. Don't be the first one to light it up. Jorgensen lights it up. We'll see Mads Pedersen do the next attack. And then when we get into 108, 110 kilometers to go, Søren Kragh Andersen, Albacete de Koenig, has a rear flat tire. We see Sylvain Dillier come flying up next to him. He wants to give him his bike. And then Søren Kragh Andersen looks at him and says, no, man, get going. I see the car right behind me. So Sylvain Dillier will go back up. He'll end up catching the back. And then Søren Kragh Andersen gets a rear wheel and starts accelerating. He will get back up to the back of the peloton. But this causes a little bit of chaos right now for Mathieu van der Poel. This was a crucial moment because, as I've already told you on Beyond the Coverage, Søren Kragh Andersen is one of the main lieutenants into the climbing parts here at Tour of Flanders, and that's why we see Mathieu van der Poel having to do all kinds of extra work as he's missing some of these groups because he's getting a little abuse. Now, Mathieu van der Poel handles everything magically. When we start seeing Mads Pedersen up the road with some Visma Lease bike riders, it's about 91 kilometers to go, and we're going to see Mathieu van der Poel get on the radio. He's getting on the radio because he knows he has teammates behind him. He's getting on the radio asking, hey, are they back there? Yes, you got teammates back there. Sit up. You don't have to bring this group back. He sits up. His teammates come back. If I back the camera up all the way to 98 kilometers, when again he was put under pressure and the groups were attacking him left and right, again he was on the radio and again his teammates come back to the front. I seen in this super crucial section here from about 110 kilometers into about 90 kilometers to go where Mathieu van der Poel was jumping across gaps, and I'm sitting on the Chesterfield thinking, what are you going to do when you get there? There's still too many guys up there. There's 10 guys. There's 15 guys up there. There's Mads. There's Visma Lease bike. There's UAE Team Emirates. There's a host of talent up there. The last thing you want to do, Mathieu van der Poel, is get yourself isolated. Remember, this is all getting caused because Søren Kragh Andersen flatted at about 108 kilometers to go, so he doesn't have his best climber of his team next to him, but he does know, I'm outnumbered here. I have to back off. I remember Gent Wevelgem when I was outnumbered with 3 Trek riders in there, and that was just last week. Remember I called him a knucklehead for pulling 20 kilometers? I'm calling him brilliant right now because Mathieu van der Poel's backing off the throttle not once but twice after getting on the radio, and his Albacete de Koenig riders have everything under control at the front. Then we see attack from Mads Pedersen. It's coming with about 85 kilometers to go, just a hair over, I believe. Mads Pedersen's going full gas. He's got Gianni Vermeersch on his wheel. Gianni Vermeersch, he's there. He's got a free ride. Mads Pedersen, what are you doing? I called other guys the knuckleheads. It started with Abrahamsen back there from X. It continued with Jorgensen. And now we have 80-something kilometers to go. Mads Pedersen's up the road, and he's got Gianni on his wheel. What do you plan on doing right here, Mads Pedersen? What do you think's going to happen? How much pressure are you going to put under Albacete de Koenig back there if you got an Albacete de Koenig rider sitting on your wheel? Now, we see Albacete de Koenig at the front back there. They got everything under control. The gap up to Mads Pedersen is only at about 25 seconds as they're fanning the throttle. Occasionally, we start seeing some other attacks from different teams trying to get up there with Mads Pedersen, but none of it's happening because Albacete de Koenig are controlling the peloton here at Tour of Flanders, something magically. Now, we're going to get all the way into about 55 kilometers to go, but let me back it up just a hair because we're getting the second run here of Old Quermont, and this is when Lascano from Movistar, he's throwing in a huge acceleration. He's got Mathieu van der Poel on his wheel, but Mads Pedersen and Gianni are still up the road. With the acceleration from Lascano, we're going to see Mathieu van der Poel get on the front. That gap was only at about 7-8 seconds when Mathieu van der Poel closes the gap quickly up to Mads Pedersen and goes right by the Trek rider. Once he goes by the Trek rider, Mads, he starts hurting off the back. Lascano gets on the front as they're going past the tents here on Old Quermont, and he pulls back Mathieu van der Poel. Could his legs be hurting right now on Old Quermont, the second passage? Things have gotten slippery and nasty out there on the cobblestones, so quite possibly we see Mathieu van der Poel, maybe his legs are falling off as the group comes back together with about 10 riders. Now it's going to grow, it's going to shrink throughout the Tour of Flanders here. Mads Pedersen still in the picture, Jorgensen from Visma Lease bikes around the area. And then we'll see him going up over the top with about 50 kilometers, 55. We're going to see the attack here, and that's Cortinas. Cortinas from Movistar throws in attack. As he starts the Koppenberg, Cortina's got a little bit of a gap, but it's being led by Matthew van der Poel. And then the back wheel slips there from Cortina from Movistar. He gets off his bike, starts playing around, but nobody's playing around in the back because we got about 45 kilometers to go. Matthew van der Poel's accelerating. He's got Jorgensen on his wheel. Mads Pedersen's trying to hold on too. As we see Cortina's thinking about getting back on his bike, Matthew van der Poel's already going by the Movistar rider. Jorgensen's suffering like crazy. The gap is starting to open up. Mads Pedersen's opened up the gap on Jorgensen behind. We're going over the top here of the Koppenberg. First, #1 ranked rider here in Tour of Flanders. That's Matthew van der Poel going over first. I told you second ranked here was Jorgensen. He's going over second, but the gap is about 5-6 seconds there to Matthew van der Poel. And then you look further back with an even bigger gap. That's Mads Pedersen, who I told you was third before the race started. He's going over the Koppenberg third. And then it's all 1s, 2s, and 3s back there going over the Koppenberg because they literally had to get off their bikes. The whole GC favorite back there, except for the cyclocross star, Matthew van der Poel. Remember when I always make fun of those cyclocross riders? Well, I'm not making fun of Matthew van der Poel right now because these are perfect conditions. He's got his back wheel under control. It's not slipping and sliding all over the place. And he's got a lead on Jorgensen as he crosses the top of the Koppenberg. Jorgensen's got to decide right at this moment. Remember, if I back you guys up beyond the coverage, if you can't go with Matthew van der Poel right away, you got to regroup. The only problem is when you try to regroup, you look back there, it's blown up in pieces. I don't think there's very many to regroup with, so Jorgensen has no choice but to try to close this gap. He's going to try to hold Matthew van der Poel for about 4 or 5 kilometers at a gap, but it just keeps stretching out to about 30 seconds, and that's when the leash breaks. Jorgensen's done. He's going to go back to the group back there chasing with Mads Pedersen in it, but they're losing time left and right to the Dutch rider, Matthew van der Poel, who's flying solo at the front right here at Tour of Flanders. He's going to come into the next round of climbs as he's got a gap on everyone. Now we're coming into about 26 kilometers to go. We're going to see 2 riders slip off. They started racing for second back there, guys. They stopped working to bring back Matthew van der Poel, and his gap's well over a minute, something like a minute and a half when he starts the next climb coming up under 26 kilometers to go, when the guys in the back start attacking each other. It's Dylan Teuns back there going up the road with Alberto Bettiol from EF Education. Their gap is slim as they hit Old Quermont for the last and final time with 18 kilometers to go. The group behind them is just dangling back there at about 15-20 seconds. Dylan Teuns is trying to accelerate. Alberto Bettiol's throwing everything he can into the pedal. When we look up at the top of the summit, though, Matthew van der Poel, he's going to win today's Tour of Flanders. There's no doubt about it. He'd have to crash at this moment as he crosses the top of Old Quermont. Now he drops down Old Quermont. He's got one more climb, the Paterberg. Once he hits the Paterberg, he keeps everything under control, just like he did on his attack with 45 kilometers to go up to Koppenberg. Now he's going full gas. He's got it all the way to the summit. He's got 13 kilometers to go, slight downhill, and then flat all the way in the finish. When we look back there on the Paterberg, what's happening? Dylan Teuns is trying to drop Alberto Bettiol back there from EF Education as he's got a little bit of a gap. Bettiol struggling like crazy, clawing his way back up as they go over the top of the last and final climb here of the 24 Tour of Flanders. We'll see Alberto Bettiol catch back up to Dylan Teuns. When we look at the group behind, it's set up with a bunch of sprinters, about 9 riders back there. 4 are UAE Team Emirates, and then we got 2 sprinters. Michael Matthews from Jacobs pulling hard. When we look at the other sprinter, his name's Mazzato back there. Mazzato's doing a fine ride for Arkea. He hasn't been at the front throughout this whole race, but he's in this group of 9 chasing the group of 2 who really aren't chasing Matthew van der Poel as he comes into 5 kilometers to go. We'll back the camera up just a hair because Ties Benoot was in this final group for Visma Lease Bike trying to get a podium here and get some kind of salvation here at the Tour of Flanders. And as he came into about 7-8 kilometers to go, he jumps over the island. The back tire goes flat, and that means all of the dreams here for any kind of results at Tour of Flanders for Visma Lease Bike are over as Ties Benoot gets Dylan van Barley's bike. That's the wrong bike for the mechanic car back there, so he throws the bike to the side. Mechanic brings the next car, but 2 groups have already passed him. Now, we're going under about 4 kilometers to go, and that group of 9 that just became 8, they're still trying to chase the 2 riders in front that got a 10-15 second gap. We're going under 1K to go up front. Matthew van der Poel's going to win today Tour of Flanders solo because this gap is massive, as everybody's tactics here at the Tour of Flanders were a nightmare. He goes up to 400 meters, he gets under 2, does a hard look behind to see if anybody's going to catch him, and does he have time to celebrate? He does, so he jumps off his Canyon bike there, lifts it up in the air, and celebrates a 3rd victory here at Tour of Flanders to tie with the more recent victories of Tom Boonen and Fabian Cancellara and Johan Massey with 3, the most that any riders won here at Tour of Flanders. And he's done it in the 6-year period, 5-year period time here at Tour of Flanders. It's a magical run up here for Albacine de Koenig's Matthew van der Poel to get a 3rd victory at Tour of Flanders. What's happening in the back? Well, they round the final right corner, and they're coming up onto the 2 riders. Dylan Teuns is digging for every ounce of energy he can possibly get. We're coming in the 250 meters to go. It's Michael Matthews on the front starting his sprint. He comes up to the back wheel of the 2 riders in front. They're not getting the podium here. Michael Matthews goes hard over to the right. That's Niels Paulette that he's putting into the fencing. Almost quite, not quite exactly into the fencing, but he's got Mazzato on his wheel. As they come up to about 10 meters to go, Mazzato and Michael Matthews are going to have a bike throw. Mazzato will win the bike throw for 2nd here at Tour of Flanders. Michael Matthews will get 3rd. Niels Paulette will get 4th. But wait a minute. Wait a minute. Let's back up the film. Michael Matthews ends up getting relegated, loses that 3rd position podium here at Tour of Flanders to Niels Paulette. In my mind, I don't know if I would have relegated him, but if you look and go simply by the rules, Michael Matthews pretty much needs to get relegated because he went from the left side of the road all the way to the right. But honestly, when I look at the film as a professional rider, I don't think Niels Paulette could have passed Michael Matthews anyways. But of course, Michael Matthews didn't know it was Niels Paulette behind him, so he's thinking whoever's coming up on that right side, I got to bring him as far to the fencing as I can. It was clean in the old days, but it's no longer clean today, so Michael Matthews loses the podium. UAE Team Emirates, who came across the line in 4th with Niels Paulette and 4 riders in that front group back there all chasing Matthew van der Poel. They look a little depressed when they cross the line for not getting a podium, but now they get the podium with Niels Paulette. Michael Matthews, he ends up getting relegated and out of the race. Now, UAE Team Emirates had a fine ride, and we'll see that Magnus Sheffield had a fine ride getting in the top 10, and Mugato from UAE Team Emirates, he's a young kid, but this kid's going great with a top 5 here at Tour of Flanders for UAE Team Emirates. It was a fantastic ride, and guys, I left out all kinds of details on today's race. You want to go back to about 115 kilometers and watch all the way to the finish because there was knucklehead moves all over. Mads Pedersen, what are you doing? And the director sportif for Trek, when we're talking Steven de Jong, who was in the car, I know because I saw his face there, those 2 riders decided a horrendous tactic. When you go up the road with Johnny Vermeersch, you're not putting any pressure on Albacine de Koenig back there. Your sole job last night when you went to bed was whatever tactic can put pressure on Albacine de Koenig to chase all day long is what you want. When that group of 8 went up the road, they had no effect whatsoever. I didn't even tell you in the video when they got caught because they had 0 effect on the race, with the exception that Sylvain Dillier rode the front for 50 kilometers solo on his own. But it didn't put any pressure on Albacine de Koenig because it was missing UAE Team Emirates riders, it was missing Trek, it was missing, of course, Visma Lease Bike riders, and then Visma Lease Bike. You want to use the number 2 rider with 112 kilometers to go, Matteo Jorgensen, to start the tacking, to start the fast work. You got other teammates for that. Jorgensen, never listen to your directors again. Whoever came up with that strategy is a knucklehead, because I know that cannot have been Jorgensen's strategy here at Tour of Flanders after I watched the young American do a spectacular tactical job on none other than Remco Evenepoel during Paris-Nice, and another spectacular job when he just got done winning Dwars door Vlaanderen. That had to be somebody from the car telling the American kid to start attacking at 112 kilometers to go. Well, throughout the race, as we got deeper and deeper, Mads Pedersen and Matteo Jorgensen fell off the map because of those ridiculous tactics. And we see a rider like Mazata from Arkea and 4 UAE Team Emirates in the second group chasing Mathieu van der Poel. So we know the big-time favorites failed in all of their tactics here today, with the exception of Mathieu van der Poel. Because at 91 kilometers to go, you were magic to get on the race radio, pause the race, wait for your teammates to come back. Wait for Søren Kragh Andersen to get back to the front so you guys can control the race so that your teammates can get you deep into the Tour of Flanders, so deep that you didn't have to really put in a big attack until 45 kilometers to go up on that wet and slippery, nasty Koppenberg climb to light everybody up and go solo and entertain all of us sitting on the Chesterfield. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next edition real soon.